I didn't want the house. Not because it was falling apart, which it was. Not because of the mold, the creaking pipes, the locked basement door. But because it was hers. My mother's. And we hadn't spoken in 12 years. The lawyer called me 2 weeks after her funeral. She left everything to you, he said. I laughed, out loud. Everything? Everything meant a crumbling Victorian on a dead-end street in a town no one remembered. Everything meant the ghosts we never named, the silence we never broke, the apologies that came too late, if they came at all. But I went. Not out of sentiment. Out of obligation. And maybe, something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or the kind of grief you don't recognize until it settles in your bones. I arrived on a Thursday. The air smelled like old wood and rain. The front porch sagged. Ivy clung to the windows like a hand trying to pull something back inside. The neighbors watched from behind lace curtains. Small towns never forget. Especially not scandals. Especially not mothers who scream in the middle of the night, or daughters who run away and never come back. The first night was silent. No footsteps, no creaks, no whispers. Just the quiet kind of dark that feels like it's holding its breath. But the second night, I found the cassette player. It was in the attic. Covered in dust. Old, heavy, the kind with big square buttons and the kind of sound that crackles like a fire. And inside it, a tape, labeled in red ink. Play me, Anna. My name. In her handwriting. And that's when it started. The voice. I waited 3 days before I pressed play. 3 days of pacing the hallway outside the attic. 3 days of running my fingers over the cassette label. 3 days of trying to decide if I wanted to hear her voice again, or if I was terrified of what she might say. On the fourth morning, the rain started. It was soft at first, then steady, like a heartbeat against the roof. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the cassette player in front of me like some ancient relic. I closed my eyes and pressed the button. Click. Static. Then, Anna. Her voice. Older than I remembered, slower, fragile, but unmistakable. If you're listening to this, it means you're here, in the house. I wasn't sure you'd come back. She paused. I could hear the tension in her breath, the clumsy way she tried to hold it all in. There's so much I never told you, so much I couldn't. Not because I didn't want to, because I was afraid. I felt a coldness settle in my chest, not from the attic, from the words, from her voice, carried across time and tape, speaking directly to a version of me I wasn't sure existed anymore. I know you hate me. She wasn't wrong. But before you leave this place, there are things you need to understand. Things about me, about you, about what happened that night. My stomach twisted. What night? Start with the key, Anna, the brass one on the hook behind the pantry door. Click. The tape ended. Just like that. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, her voice echoing in my head, heavier than the rain outside. The pantry door, the brass key. She wanted me to find something. Or maybe she wanted me to remember something. Either way, the attic suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. And the house didn't feel empty anymore. The key was exactly where she said it would be. Behind the pantry door, hanging on a bent nail, tarnished, cold, like it hadn't been touched in years. I held it in my palm for a while, trying to guess what it opened, hoping it wasn't what I thought. But of course, it was. The basement. That door had been locked since I was 13. She never let me down there, never explained why. Just told me it was dangerous. That the stairs were steep. That the foundation was unstable. But I remember the arguments, the crying, and once, the sound of something being dragged. The key slid in with a soft click. I hesitated, my fingers resting on the doorknob, heart thudding like it knew something I didn't. Then I opened it. Dust rose like breath from the dark. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended, flashlight trembling in my hand. Each step deeper felt like walking into a memory I hadn't chosen to keep. The air grew colder, thicker, like grief made physical. At the bottom of the stairs, I found it. A single chair, facing an old tape recorder. And beside it, a box, full of cassettes, each one labeled in her handwriting. Volume 1, Anna, age 6. Volume 2, The Day He Left. Volume 3, The Lie. Volume 4, The Blood. Volume 5, The Door. My throat went dry. I didn't even notice I was shaking. This wasn't just a basement. It was a vault. A confession booth. A timeline of things she'd hidden. And maybe, things I'd buried, too. I took the first tape upstairs. Not the one marked age 6. That felt too personal, too close. I chose volume 3, The Lie. I wanted to know what she thought the lie was. Because I had my own guesses. I sat on the living room floor, cross-legged again. Just like before. Pressed play. This is the one I'm most afraid of you hearing, she began. Because it's where everything began to fall apart, and you don't remember it. Not really, not the way I do. I leaned in. You were 9. It was raining, like today. Your father had just come back after a week away. You ran into his arms like you hadn't noticed anything strange. But I did. I saw the lipstick on his collar, the way he wouldn't look me in the eye. A pause. Then, he swore it meant nothing, that it was just one time, but I knew better. And so, I told you he left because of work. I let you believe he was still a good man. That was the lie. I didn't do it for you, I did it for me. I stopped the tape. I couldn't breathe. I remembered that day, the smell of rain, his suitcase. But in my memory, he had kissed her, smiled, told me stories. But now I didn't know if that had ever happened. What else had she hidden? What else had I invented just to survive? I looked back at the box. Dozens more tapes. Dozens more truths I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. But I knew I would. Because the voice in the cassette player wasn't just hers anymore. It was mine, too. I waited until nightfall. There was something about darkness that made it easier to listen. Maybe because I couldn't see myself reacting. Couldn't watch my own face betray emotions I wasn't ready to feel. The house was quiet. Rain still tapping against the windows like a soft warning. I put in volume 4, The Blood. The title alone felt like a threat. I pressed play. I never wanted you to know this. Her voice was different this time. Flat. Like she'd disconnected from the words before saying them. But I think you always felt it. I leaned forward, hugging my knees, my breath shallow. You were 12. It was the week after your birthday. You had gone to stay with Aunt Clara. I hadn't remembered that, not until now. That was the night I found the photo. Me, him, and her. She paused. I could hear the rustle of the old recorder, the warping of the tape. She looked just like you, Anna. That's what haunts me most. The woman he chose to betray me with looked just like you. Same dark hair, same eyes, same quiet sadness. I felt sick. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just went into the kitchen, took the knife, and waited. A silence followed. Too long. Then, her voice, quieter. But it wasn't him who walked through the door first. My pulse stopped. It was you. You'd gotten homesick. Aunt Clara said you cried the whole first night. She brought you back early. I remembered the cab ride now, faintly, the smell of leather seats, the way my mother didn't hug me. I hid the knife under a dish towel, smiled, told you everything was fine. But there was blood already. On my hands, under my nails, from gripping the handle too tightly. My stomach turned. I wanted to stop the tape. But I couldn't. I washed it off before you noticed. I lied to you again. A pause. I was never the same after that night. I think neither of us were. Click. End of tape. I sat frozen. Hands numb, mouth dry. There'd always been a coldness in the house after that year. I thought it was just growing up, the awkward space between child and adult. But now I wondered if I'd walked into a storm that night. If I'd stood in a kitchen where violence had already bloomed, and smiled at a woman who was trying to bury it under dish towels and motherly instincts. I returned the tape to the box with shaking fingers. I didn't know what scared me more. That she had planned to hurt him. Or that she hadn't. Only one tape in the top row remained, volume 5, The Door. And I knew, deep down, that the real secret waited there. The one she never spoke about. The one tied to the room at the end of the hallway. The one that was always locked. The house had 12 rooms. Only one was always locked. Growing up, I used to think it was just a storage closet. Then, when I got older and more curious, I tried to pick the lock with bobby pins and paper clips. But no matter what I did, that door wouldn't open, ever. Even after she died, I never tried again. Until now. The tape labeled volume 5, The Door was the heaviest of them all. Not in weight. In silence. It took me 3 attempts to press play. Click. You've always been afraid of that room. Her voice was soft, measured. Not broken like the last tape. Not angry, almost expectant. So was I. The words crackled, distant and close at the same time. Your father told me never to go in there, not after the baby. I blinked. What baby? He kept the crib in there for a while, then the rocking chair, then, nothing. He said it was his space, a place for silence. Her breath hitched. But one night, I went in anyway. My heart slowed. You were asleep. The house was too quiet. I picked the lock with his old skeleton key. A long pause. I could hear her trying to steady herself through the tape. I could feel it through the speaker. There were no toys, no furniture, no crib. Just boxes, and the tapes. Tapes? He kept dozens of them, labeled with names I didn't recognize. They weren't music. They weren't family. They were women. Anna. Crying, whispering, some screaming. A chill ran down my back. I don't know what he did. I don't know how he found them, but I know what I heard. And I know the door didn't just keep us out, it kept something in. Another silence. I wanted to burn the whole house down that night. But then I heard your voice, down the hallway, saying "Mommy?" in the dark. I covered my mouth. Tears burned behind my eyes. I didn't remember that. Or maybe I had buried it too deep. I locked the door. I locked it and never went back, but he did. Every Thursday. I flinched. Thursday. That was the night she always made me stay at a friend's house. The night she said she needed quiet time. The night my father was always working late. If you're listening to this, Anna, you have to understand. Her voice cracked. You didn't come from love. You came from a lie. But you were the only thing real I ever had. Click. End of tape. I stared at the cassette player. For a long, long time. The rain had stopped. But inside me, a storm had started. That night, I found the skeleton key behind the old pantry shelf. Exactly where she said it would be. I walked down the hallway in complete silence. No floorboard creaked. No wind moaned. Even the walls seemed to be holding their breath. I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a sound like something exhaling after years of suffocation. The door creaked open. Inside was dust, boxes, and one single wooden chair facing the far wall. No windows, no light, just one thing on the chair. A new tape, labeled, in her handwriting, Volume 6, The Truth. I didn't play the sixth tape right away. I sat with it, held it in my palm like a pulse. Her handwriting was shakier than on the others. Like she knew this would be the last one. Like her hand couldn't keep up with the weight of what she was finally ready to say. Volume 6, The Truth. Even the label felt like a warning. I carried the tape downstairs. Not to the attic. Not to the locked room. To the kitchen. Somewhere normal, somewhere human. I poured myself tea, though my hands were trembling too hard to hold the cup. And then, click. Anna. Her voice was barely a whisper now. If you're here, if you found the room, then you know. A long, slow inhale. He wasn't your father. I froze. He raised you, paid the bills, took the pictures, but he wasn't your blood. Your real father was someone I knew before the lies started. Before the tapes, before the pain. A creak echoed in the background of the recording. A floorboard? I tried to leave once, when you were 3. I packed our things, took you in the car, drove all night. She paused. And then, he followed. The silence that followed felt alive. We were gone for 2 days before he found us. He didn't yell, he didn't scream, he just said. She lowered her voice. I leaned closer. I erased the tape of you leaving. No one will remember you were gone. My stomach dropped. I thought he was being cruel, but it wasn't until later I realized. He meant it literally. My breath caught in my throat. He recorded everything, Anna, every fight, every confession, every mistake. And when it didn't fit the story he wanted, he erased it. I felt sick. The house became a machine, a place where memories were stored, shaped, rewritten. You were part of the story, so was I. But we were never the authors. The tape word, I thought it was over. But then, her voice returned, clearer now, sharper. There's one more tape. My heart skipped. He hid it, the original, the one that explains everything. It's not labeled, just black casing, no writing, no markings. It's buried beneath the fireplace, behind the old stone, the one that's chipped. If you find it, Anna, I need you to listen, but only once, only once. Her voice trembled. And after you do, burn it. Because some truths don't set you free, they just show you what the cage was made of. Click. The tape ended. I didn't move. Couldn't. The tea had gone cold beside me. Outside, the sky was turning the color of wet ash. The house was silent again. But I swear I heard something shift behind the walls. The stone was exactly where she said it would be. Third from the bottom, left side of the fireplace. Chipped at the corner, slightly darker than the rest. Like it had been burned, once. I pried it loose with a screwdriver and found the gap behind it. A hollow space in the wall, just wide enough to hide something long and narrow. My fingers touched cold plastic. I pulled it out. A black cassette. No label. No title. Just silence pressed into magnetic tape. And yet it felt heavier than all the others combined. I brought it to the attic. Not because I wanted to, but because it was the only place where this belonged now. I sat where I always did, beneath the slanted window, the rain barely visible through the dust. I stared at the cassette, then at the player, then back again. And then, click, static, a hum. Then, I never meant for her to find this. A man's voice. Sharp, controlled. Like every word had been measured before it ever left his lips. But in case she did, in case you are hearing this. Anna. A pause. I'm sorry. It wasn't my father's voice. Not exactly. But it was close enough to make my blood run cold. You were never supposed to remember. He sighed, not in regret, but in exhaustion. The early days were simple. Audio was everything. Memories could be shaped by tone, by repetition. Your mother, she resisted, of course, but even she began to forget. It's amazing what people will accept if you play the same tape enough times. I felt dizzy. You think photographs matter? They don't. Pictures are static. They don't breathe. But sound gets into the body, into the soul. You don't just remember voices, you feel them. A door creaked on the tape. Footsteps followed. You were 5 when the first tape was made. You had a tantrum, a real one, threw a vase, screamed for your mother. She had locked herself in the room again. His voice grew softer, almost tender. But you don't remember that, do you? Because I erased it. I played you a new version, one where you were calm, smiling, where you said, I love you, Daddy. And over time, that became your memory. I wanted to tear the tape out. But I couldn't move. You were my project, Anna. My proof that reality could be edited. And for a while, it worked. Another pause. Longer this time. Then. But you were always stronger than I expected. You started asking questions. You noticed the gaps, the skipped moments, the way your voice never sounded quite like your own on the recordings. And worst of all, you listened when your mother whispered the truth. The cassette hissed. That's when I made the last tape. The one she hid. And if you've heard that. He sighed again. Then I've already lost. Click. The silence after that was unbearable. I sat there for what felt like hours. The black cassette still inside the player. The room dim around me. My childhood rewritten before my eyes. I now understood the feeling that had haunted me for years. The sensation that my memories belonged to someone else. They did. They belonged to him. But not anymore. I took the tape. All of them. And brought them outside to the fire pit behind the house. It was still raining, but I didn't care. I lit the match. Watched the plastic bubble and curl. Watched my past melt into smoke. Watched the voice die. Chapter 8, Her Voice. I didn't expect there to be one more tape. But grief has a strange way of leaving trails. It wasn't hidden, not like the others. It was in her sewing drawer, beneath spools of thread and scraps of faded fabric. A single cassette in a clear case. Labeled in her handwriting, soft, looping script I hadn't seen in years. For Anna, when it's over. I almost didn't press play. But the house was quiet now. The ghosts gone. The rain had stopped. And I needed to hear her voice, one last time. Click. Silence. Then, my little bird. I broke. Just hearing that again, the name she used when I was small, when she kissed me goodnight and told me I was made of starlight. If this is in your hands, it means you remembered. It means he failed. Her voice was calm, clear, stronger than I remembered. You were never broken, Anna, never fragile, just rewritten. But your truth was always inside you, and now it's yours again. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I tried to leave clues, the humming, the keys, the spaces in the wall. I had to be careful. He recorded everything, but I knew one day you'd feel it, that tug inside you that said, "This isn't real." And I knew you'd follow it. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Burn the tapes, burn every lie, but keep one thing, your voice. Record it, speak it, reclaim it. Tell the story, even if it hurts. Because silence is how they win. And you, my little bird, were never meant to be caged. Click. I didn't move. I just sat there with her words filling the attic like sunlight after years of dark. And for the first time in my life, the silence felt kind. Not hollow. Not heavy. Just still. Later that night, I found an old blank cassette in a drawer. I dusted off the recorder, sat cross-legged in the attic, pressed record. And I spoke. Not her story. Not his. Mine. From the very beginning. And the voice that filled the room was finally mine.